Oh, hello. Welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today is a very pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things, and we have many things to talk about on this pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things, including upcoming videos, things that you can look forward to on Stuff and Things and Stuff and Things Plays. We will be giving a little mini movie review. My fiance and I checked out The French Dispatch, the newest Wes Anderson film, last week, so I want to talk about that a little bit. We have to mention the Seahawks. We're going to talk about that briefly. And then the main topic of the show, some of you may have heard, you may have seen it on the news, that there was a bit of flooding in my neck of the woods this last week, and we're going to talk a bit about that. A lot of you were asking if that had affected me at all, so we'll get into that for sure. And then we have your feedback, lots of your feedback, in hashtag #AskStuffandThings, mostly about last week's Sunday Stuff and Things, a little bit about the Gerbil video. So, take a big breath, let's get going. All right, upcoming videos. What you can look forward to this week on Stuff and Things, let me pick up this little crumb and put it there. You can look forward to a revisited episode. Many of you asked to see this when I was asking you which blend you wanted me to talk about next. It will be a revisited episode on this, Ashton Artisan's blend. There you go. And this is interesting to me, and I think it will be interesting to you because the original version of Artisan's blend that I reviewed over 6 years ago now had Syrian Latakia in it. And now this version does not. It just has Cyprian Latakia. So originally, Latakia was made in Syria. In Latakia, because of the political situation in Syria and all the upheaval that's been going on for years now, we can no longer get Latakia from Syria. And so pretty much all Latakia has to come from Cyprus. And for a while there were some manufacturers who still had a nice supply of Syrian Latakia. They were dipping into that for several blends. There was HH Vintage Syrian from McFadin, Ashton Artisan's blend. And so knowing that they had to change one of the core components of this blend, I was very curious to see what it was like now without that core component. And I have to say, I was very fascinated with the results. It wasn't what I was expecting. You should definitely check it out. That video will be posting on Wednesday at noon Pacific time. We also, of course, are continuing the Demon Souls series on Stuff and Things Plays. I'm really enjoying that game. I think it's hilarious. I think it's just kind of classic Stuff and Things or Stuff and Things Plays sort of gameplay going on. Kevin the Kurt's adventures continuing on Demon Souls. So please check that out if you haven't already, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Stuff and Things Plays at 2 p.m. Pacific. The French Dispatch, the latest Wes Anderson film. So some of you may or may not know that I am a big Wes Anderson fan. I was first made aware of him when I was in college, actually, and he actually came to give a talk at the USC Film School, and I was quite fascinated by what he had to say. I thought his taste in music was very much in line with my own, a lot of 60s British stuff. So I watched Rushmore, I went back and watched Bottle Rocket, loved Royal Tenenbaums, pretty much have loved every film that he's put out. I may sneeze. Excuse me. I should probably edit that out, but I may not. Loved everything he's ever done. I can understand some people who consider him a little bit too, his style maybe too artificial, a little bit too, I hate when people use the word precious, but he has very meticulously constructed scenes, sets, costuming, everything has a little bit of an artificial quality to it, but I've always thought that by him focusing so much on the look of the film and a sort of studied, not very naturalistic way of having his actors perform, in some ways it can heighten the emotional impact of the films, and that's what I've always thought, and that's how they've always affected me. And I've just always been a big fan. I love Wes Anderson films. Some of you saw me acting like a weirdo on the Gerbil video that I posted last week, and that definitely is inspired by Wes Anderson to a certain extent. So anyway, I was very looking forward to French Dispatch. I've been hearing about this film for years now, wondering when it was ever going to come out, and then I was just sort of surprised when, oh, it's in the local theater right now. So Diamond and I went to go watch it, And I have to say, I was quite impressed. She is not the biggest Wes Anderson fan, actually. I am much more of a fan than she is. I think previously her favorite Wes Anderson film was Bottle Rocket, which was his very first film, and his style was very much very apparent there, but it hadn't gotten quite as, I don't know, I'd say probably The Grand Budapest Hotel was like the height of his, I'm playing with framing, with scene composition, like everything is very just so. Bottle Rocket was a little looser, but that was probably her favorite film. And she actually, I think I'm right in saying, said that French Dispatch is her new favorite Wes Anderson film. She actually really, really liked it. And I did as well. For those of you who haven't been following it, it is set in a fictional French town or city. The main narrative of the film takes place in the 70s, I believe, the early 70s, and it's basically about, it's really hard to say what it's about. The framing device for the film is that there is this American supplemental to a newspaper from the Midwest that is located in this French city and does what they call the French Dispatch of, what was it? It was the Kansas Star-Ledger or something like that. And Bill Murray plays the editor of the French Dispatch. He had come as an expat to this town in France and started writing, and it's so hard to explain it, but there are basically three main stories, and they're stories that three of the reporters for the French Dispatch are involved in and following and telling. And so it has this interesting framing device. Without giving too much away, I just think it looks beautiful. I think the stories are very interesting and very effective. They do what they set out to do. They elicit the emotional response that they wanted to elicit, at least from what I could tell. The performances are all very fun. It's just a really creative, inventive, quirky, interesting film, and I love the fact that it is still able to be made in this day and age when it's mostly Marvel movies and sequels and basically retreads of old films or old series or whatever. If it's something that someone has some sort of nostalgia for, we will make a movie about it and throw it on the screen. And those have their place, I guess. But I, for one, am very sick of Marvel movies and superhero movies. And so it's nice to see that even though, you know, this isn't a huge, big budget Hollywood film. I think a lot of the funding for Wes Anderson's films come from Europe, but it's still a major movie release, and it is so weird and so quirky and just so creative and interesting, and you definitely should check it out. I don't really want to say too much more about the plot or anything else, but if you enjoy films, and maybe you're a little tired or you have fatigue from all the action films and Marvel movies, go check out The French Dispatch. I don't think you'll be disappointed. All right, so let's talk about those Seahawks. And now, the topic of the show. Okay, so some of you have asked me lately, writing me on Instagram, via Twitter, some comments on YouTube, the flooding, are you okay? There's been flooding. And thank you for your concern. Yes, we're okay. Basically, we had a lot of water going on in pretty much all the Pacific Northwest, but centered around northwestern Washington, Whatcom County, Skagit County. I'm in Whatcom County. And for a little background here, I can remember as a child several major flooding events that have happened here. There was a time when my aunt and uncle, when I was, God, I'm trying to remember how old I was, pretty damn young, in grade school, there was a lot of flooding and some of their property flooded really badly. I remember going through and looking at the wreckage. I remember another time when my friend's family had an office space and that flooded really badly because of a bunch of rain and, you know, rivers overflowing their dikes and all this stuff. So it's happened before. And typically, Bellingham doesn't get really the brunt of it. There are several rivers around here. There's the Nooksack River, there's the Skagit River, and usually if you are in their basins, that's where most of the flooding is going to take place. Bellingham is not right on the banks of a river. There are several creeks and things that go through Bellingham, but for the most part, not too much flooding here. But this year, we've had a lot of rain this year anyway, because it's a La Nina year, so that means it's usually a lot wetter, a lot wetter than it would typically be. And I know the reputation of the Pacific Northwest is that we get rain constantly, and we do, but it's not a lot of rain. There isn't usually a lot of accumulation. So it might rain every day between October and, May, but there won't be a huge accumulation of rain. I think I'm going to just pull this off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure New York gets more rain than we do. I'm pretty sure Paris and London and a lot of other places get significantly more accumulation of rain than we do. We just have rain on more days than those cities do. So it's like, oh, the Pacific Northwest, it's raining all the time. Yes, but you don't typically have really hard, really heavy rain. But lately, we had been getting a lot of very hard, very heavy rain, and our rivers were already swollen, our storm drains were already kind of at capacity. And last weekend, from Sunday until I think Monday night, so almost a 3-day period, we had as much rain during that 3-day period as we typically do throughout the entire month of November. And November is our wettest month. On average, I think we get like 5.2, 5.3 inches of rain on most Novembers. We got that much in 3 days. So there was a lot of rain. And so on Sunday, it had been raining really hard. It had been continuing to rain really hard. And Diamond and I were running some errands, and we already noticed there were some low-lying streets in Bellingham where there was some standing water. We were trying to get on the freeway at one point, and there was a significant amount of water near the on-ramp, and we're a little worried, like, I think I can get through here, and I managed to get through. It was like bumper level. And so we weren't sure how bad it was going to get. Then it continued to rain throughout Sunday night, and then Monday morning I had to work, and driving to work, let me show you this little clip. I had to drive through some rather significant standing water. So this is not typical. You don't normally get this in the town of Bellingham. And if this was happening in Bellingham, then I could only imagine at the time what was going on in their little towns called Sumas and Everson, things that are right close to the Nooksack River, a town called Ferndale near here as well. So I was worried that it was going to get a lot worse. And it definitely did. It continued raining very hard all through Monday into Monday night. And by Tuesday, there was a lot of destruction. So Bellingham basically survived most of it. There was one area, there's a street called Iowa Street in Bellingham where there was a lot of flooding. There were businesses that were damaged, businesses that were flooded out, but it's mostly a commercial area. So there were like car dealerships and gas stations and warehouses and things like that where there was a lot of damage. In fact, I'm going to take some footage from, I believe it was the Bellingham Herald YouTube channel. I'll show you a little bit of drone footage they had of the Iowa Street area. So that was the flooding we had in Bellingham, but the brunt of it was really focused on places like Sumas and Everson and Ferndale, where there were hundreds of homes flooded out, hundreds of families displaced, many people evacuated. It was really bad for those people, and we got off really lucky in Bellingham. There was no flooding where we live at all. We're not on a hill or anything, but we're above sea level to a significant amount, and there's no creeks, no rivers right near where we were, no low-lying areas. But just driving around on Monday and on Tuesday, there were so many spots out in the county where there was just water over the roadway, water flowing across the road, looking into people's fields alongside of the road, and they were just completely flooded. So significant damage. We came out of it perfectly okay, but there were a lot of people who experienced a lot of flood damage, whose houses were destroyed, who were basically forced to evacuate. And so, yeah, pretty significant. Thank you for your concern, though. Like I said, we're totally okay, and hopefully this doesn't happen again. As I said, I remember several instances as a kid where massive amounts of rain like this have fallen. But we had, I think it was February of 2020, some of the outlying areas in the county flooded pretty badly as well. It wasn't really that bad in Bellingham during that event, but yeah, pretty significant, pretty crazy. It looks like now the rain is just back to what it normally is, where you just get some drizzle and some showers pretty much every day, interspersed with sun and clouds, and that's just kind of typical for this area. And hopefully it stays that way. All right, gang, but we have lots of feedback from you. We have some questions, we have some missives about the Sunday Stuff and Things video that I posted last week, where I was asking people some advice on what you'd like to see on the channel, things that you'd like for me to review. So let's get through this. If you would like to contact me and you have a question that you would like answered on the Sunday Stuff and Things, tweet at @SATBradley with the hashtag askstuffandthings. Or you can leave comments on YouTube videos and I will go through those and try to pick out questions. And if you are a Patreon supporter, you can contact me there. But via YouTube, I believe, this is in response to the Gerbil video that I posted, where I was showing that I was making some progress trying to tame my little gerbils. This is from Shinlangan. Bradley, would you consider doing some conditional training for your little gerbils? Having some animal training experience, may I suggest that you remove the food bowl, at least temporarily, so they do not have access to Bradley buffet all day long. Don't worry, they won't die from starvation. Then at least 2 times a day you make a big gong sound or some kind of flash bang ruckus. Then immediately you put your hand in there with the food. They will learn to link the food. They will learn to link that food as a reward only after sudden major stimulus. The inherent drive for food will make them learn very quickly that they have to depend on you. Now, their lives are too content and they do not care about you and only allow a bit of tolerance for you. You might want to change it so they want to seek you for their own well-being and refuge, not just an allowance. Interesting suggestions. I appreciate that. I am pretty sure that what I'm doing right now is bearing fruit, and everything I've read says that as they get older, they're still, only a couple months old, that as they get older, they'll calm down a bit more, and they already are. I'm already seeing that. And I am trying kind of some of the things that you're suggesting here, where basically whenever they get food, it's me giving them the food, I'm making a lot of noise as I'm giving them the food, I'm doing the noises, and I'm talking to them the whole time, just so they will equate me with being fed. And I'm putting my hand out with food on it, letting them crawl around on there so they get used to that. I think it's working, but I appreciate your suggestion, and if I need to, I will maybe take some of that advice. Next, from Farmer Fox, question. Have you owned or used a dip pen? A dip pen. If not, is there a fountain pen nib that might get the same results? Thank you. I have owned a dip pen, so that's a pen that has usually a much more flexible nib on it that you dip into an inkwell and then write with. I don't know of any fountain pens, except maybe there were some Noodler's pens that tried to recreate that really flexible way of being able to write with a dip pen. I can't remember what they're called, maybe like a Noodler's Ahab or something. If you look up Noodler's pens, if they are even still being made, they tried to do a really, really flexible nib for a fountain pen where you'd be able to write in a much more expressive way where you have very narrow lines and wide lines as you flex that nib. And that's kind of the benefit of a dip pen. So look into Noodler's fountain pens if they still exist. Now we have some responses to last week's Sunday Stuff and Things. This is from Jacob Creamer. Bradley, how about some guitar accessory reviews? Strings, picks, straps, etc. Thank you for that suggestion. So I was asking people, are there things that you would like to see me review? Because there are things I'm interested in, but I don't know if you will necessarily be interested in seeing me review them. And he suggests guitar accessories. That's definitely something that I've thought of, and we may do some more of that. So thank you, Jacob. Next, from Name That Pipe, they say, I would like to see Artisan's blend revisited. Also, an occasional cigar review would be interesting. So most people ask for Artisan's blend. That's why I did Artisan's blend revisited for the video that you'll be seeing this week. And he mentioned cigars. We also have one from Q Morris, who says, you said you're a fan of Padron cigars before. Have you considered rolling cigar reviews into the repertoire of videos you do? I realize the implication for decommodification or demonetization, I'm assuming you mean, with that subject matter, but it's something I think would suit your crowd and the channel you've created. Cheers from Dallas. Thank you, Q Morris. So I've kind of touched on this in the past. I don't really know much about them, about cigars. I don't know how YouTube's algorithm will react to that word even. I don't know a lot about them. There are a couple I've had that I've really enjoyed, but that's something I would consider if I did a little more research and felt like I had a better footing or a better grounding in that world. Maybe I would feel as though I could talk intelligently about that. But right now, I don't really feel that. But we'll see. Next, from Joseph Tansey. Do Artisan's blend. Yep, the old tin had Syrian written on the front, the newer ones don't, but to my taste, it's still just as good. Well, Joseph, stay tuned for Wednesday and you will see if I feel the same way as well. Next, from Glenn Dunnington, they suggest, how about hats? Maybe. I do wear a lot of hats. Next, from Castle Gates, I love watches, and I watch many watch-related YouTube channels. That's a very classy Bulova you've got there. If you're interested in getting more into watches, I suggest looking into the gateway drug watches, such as the Seiko S, or is that 5? I think that's 5. Orient, Citizen, Vostok, etc. Affordable mechanical watches. So I had mentioned how some people have asked me to do a review on this Bulova, but it's not made anymore. And so I thought, what would be the point of doing that review? And it's the only watch I own. But I do really love mechanical watches. Jesus Christ. I do really love mechanical watches in spite of the fact that I just threw this one on the ground. And I like the idea of mechanical watches. I think it's just such a cool technology, something that has been around for hundreds of years, refined and refined and refined. So I would love to do more mechanical watch reviews. That is something that we will see. And maybe I would do just kind of a pilot review of this Bulova watch just to kind of get my feet wet with it. I know that, you know, it's one thing if you're reviewing leather journals, a company might contact you to give you a leather journal to review. I don't know if I were reviewing watches if, you know, Seiko would be like, hey, here's a grand Seiko watch for you to review. It only costs $120,000, but you can just take it and review it. Like, I don't think that's probably going to happen, but we'll see. And I certainly can't afford to buy a bunch of mechanical watches to review them, but I would definitely like to. I think that would be fun. Next, from Tech01 Writer, love your channel. Not sure if you drink, but did you ever think of reviewing fine spirits like scotch, gin, and tequila? Stuff and Things drinks. People have suggested this before, and thank you for the suggestion, Tech01 Writer. I do drink occasionally. I will have wine with my fiance sometimes. Sometimes we'll go out and I'll have a beer. We go out and get, like, I had some good old fashions the other day, but I don't love alcohol all that much. It's very much a social thing that if I'm doing something like that, I will imbibe because that's kind of what you're doing. I never drink at all at home, like ever, really. unless, like I mentioned, we occasionally, very rarely, have wine with dinner or something. So I don't, again, it's one of those situations where I don't think I would be qualified to give reviews on alcohol, other than me maybe tasting it and being, oh, that's gross, I don't like that. And that might be a very short and very obnoxious review for those of you who really do like spirits and different kinds of alcohol. But yeah, keep it in mind. We'll throw it all in the box there, and if we have to, we can open that box and grab it out. But gang, thank you for all the feedback and all the suggestions. Before we go, though, it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where we thank you, the Patreon supporters, the people who help make this show go. The people who help pay for the fancy camera that is recording this video, the lights that are shining upon me. Every bit helps, and it's much appreciated, and every week we like to show that appreciation by thanking those who support the channels at $25 or more a month. People like Kirk Crompton, Private Eye, Glenn, Just Glenn, Jason Buckner, Gloria Phillips, Ryan McFadin, Matt Marino, Joe Heaphy, and MDoftheNorth. Thank you all so much. And of course, the Maniacs, the crazy people who support the channels at $100 a month. People like Peter Straub, our good friend, Bob Magee, Dependable Bob, David Gaudreau, Mr. Luxurious. In fact, I think it was David who requested the shirt, and I sent the shirt to him. Hopefully you've gotten the shirt, David. And then Ashes of the Phoenix, rising from the ashes to throw his beautiful light upon me and my channel, and it's much appreciated. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for watching. Please stay tuned for the revisited episode for Ashton Artisan's Blend this Wednesday. And of course, Kevin the Kurt's adventures continue every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Stuff and Things Plays. And we will have more of everything coming up. Hopefully you enjoyed the Gerbil update. I enjoyed making it, and hopefully you enjoyed watching it. I appreciate that most of you realized I was trying to be a weirdo in that video, and didn't just think that I was a weirdo. So if you haven't checked that out, check that out too. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been a good friend, Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a very pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things. I'll see you later.